So let's do some examples. Directions here, and make a new flashcard. Use radical notation to rewrite and simplify the following. 4 to the 1/2. So that 1/2, remember, means square root. So this problem is really just saying square root of 4. Square root of 4 is 2. That's easy. Second example, the 1/3 power. The 1/3 power means cube root. So this problem is asking for the cube root of 64. If you go back to your powers chart, you'll find that that's 4. Now, this next one is tricky. So let me talk about this one real quick, and let's talk about this in a simpler sense. Let's ignore the fraction exponent for a second. Let me remind you of something that you've learned about previously. Let's talk about the difference between -2 squared and -2 squared. Those two things look very similar, but different answers. And those different answers come about because of order of operations. The first one, -2 in parentheses squared, is saying -2 times -2, and a negative times a negative is a positive. Whereas the second example, remember that a negative sign really means -1 times whatever it is. And so what this is saying then is order of operations, PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. There's no parentheses here, but the next thing I should do is exponents. 2 squared is 4. Then do my multiplication. So that one's -4. The negative outside happens after the squaring. The squaring happens first, then we apply the negative. And so really the same thing needs to apply on example C. This is really saying -1 times 9 to the 1/2 power, or -1 times the square root of 9, or -1 times 3, or -3. That's really what this is saying, is take the negative after handling the exponent. Whereas I know this problem isn't asked right here, but if I had asked for -9 to the 1/2, where the -9 is in parentheses, that would mean take the square root of the whole thing, which at that point we're going to say not real. Now I know that wasn't asked, but just so you're aware, that's what it would look like if we were to get a not real value there. On to example D. The 1/4 power means the fourth root. We have 81 x to the 8th. The fourth root of 81 is 3. The fourth root of x to the 8th is x squared. Now, we can also use these exponents to help us understand how quickly I can be able to get x squared there, because let's look at just the fourth root of x to the 8th. Well, what that means is x to the 8th raised to the 1/4 power. And when you raise a power to a power, you multiply their powers. And what's 8 divided by 4? Well, it's 2. And so we can actually see that there's a rule developing here, that when you have x to a power and you're taking a radical of it, you can basically just take the power and divide by the index. And that's because of this rule, because of what's going on with these rational exponents. And there's the fancy name for what's going on here, that fraction exponents are called rational exponents. Rational, remember in math, means like a fraction. Because when we look at the word rational, the first 5 letters are ratio. Ratio means fraction. The annual part of rational means like a. So rational means like a fraction. So rational exponents are fraction-like exponents.